My name is Jason Bermas. I was graduating high school in 1997. I got accepted into the Art Institute of Philadelphia. It's pretty much all I wanted to do. The day before we were supposed to go sign the paperwork or whatever, my parents basically said to me, no, can't afford it. Probably three of my best friends were going there anyway. They had this emerging computer art program at the time. Actually, some of the guys that started it are still there. Sven Anderson, obviously one of the guys. I know that on my tail end, Sekulis was in there as well. I learned Photoshop, I learned a little video editing, some 3D modeling in Bryce. And, you know, I started to take my artwork a little bit to the next level. One of the other big Oneon experiences that I kind of remember and sticks with me was that Spike Lee came here and spoke. I remember him saying that the technology was getting so small and so cheap that anybody could make a movie at this point. And I thought to myself, well, you know, he's kind of right, because I had actually just bought my first small DV camera at the time. So 9/11 happens, and like most people at the time, I'm still buying into the mainstream media and the news. So there were a few questions that I had on that day, but for the most part, I bought the narrative that everybody was selling me. You know, Osama bin Laden, a cave, Muslims are out to get us, let's go. Well, a few things bothered me about that day, but again, 6 months or so go by. And I remember seeing on TV, like on Fox and Friends, that Lepentigate had come out. And this was Thierry Massan's book, trying to say that no plane hit the Pentagon. And I thought, what garbage. What nonsense. I was upset, actually. I was a little sick about it, you know. And I immediately turned against that information. I didn't think much of it. So I ended up going back to my old high school for a men's night basketball game. During the game, I have to go use the bathroom, and I go into the bathroom to go take a piss, and Osama bin Laden's face is in the urinal. And I'm like, wow, this is a pretty big piece of propaganda for teenagers and preteens. I mean, you're literally peeing on the guy's face. And this was around the time on the run-up to the Iraq War. And so over the next few months, I was obsessed. I went through everything publicly I could. I again was one of those guys that was utilizing these file share networks, the torrent networks, the Nutella network, Nutella network, Morpheus, you name it. Anything I could do to get my hands on raw 9/11 footage. I kind of get a reputation for that around town. You know, I'm the guy that's going to bother you at a party. I've got this desk job in the day, and I got this pizza gig at night. And I'm talking about it with one of my delivery guys. And he mentions to me that two of the guys that he went to high school with did this, you know, not so known film that I knew at the time called Loose Change. It had not gone into the second edition yet. It had not gone viral. You know, it was this first 60-minute edition. And I'd seen it because I'd seen everything there was to see about 9/11. And I said, wow, that's crazy. He's like, yeah, I went to high school with them. They're coming back to Oneonta. I could actually set up a meeting with Corey with you. I'm like, wow, that'd be great. So Corey comes in, and I talked to Corey for about an hour. And he realizes that I've got a lot of information. I got a decent head on my shoulders. And he goes, well, tell you what, why don't I give you the script and you go over it and you see if there's anything that you'd take out or you'd add. I'm like, all right. So literally comes back with the script that night. And on the bus, the OPT bus, on the way to my job, I was editing through the script. Later in the week, I met Dylan, and they both came over at the same time. And I showed them this archive of footage that I had. And so right there, you know, we kind of built this relationship, and I just kind of became part of the team, man. You know, we put Loose Change second edition out together. Before that, went down to New York City on the 4th anniversary of 9/11. We're handing out original copies of the DVD. It's actually an extra in the original second edition, and that film just took off.
Right.
And it was the first internet blockbuster. I mean, they got it right on Vanity Fair. It was the first movie to be shared as many times, and obviously because of the subject matter, it changed my life, and it was very controversial.
Right.
I don't think I'm the dumbest guy in the room. I'm definitely not the smartest. I'm just somebody that was fed up. I couldn't personally live with myself believing the things that I had believed with the evidence that I had uncovered, and said I can just go along to get along. I'm sorry, I still think somebody needs to pay for the 3,000 plus people that died on 9/11. I think somebody needs to pay for the you know, probably 2 million plus brown people that have now been just massacred across the board in the Middle East based on this lie. I think there has to be some kind of dogmatic justice out there. And unfortunately, especially in my generation, in what I believe to be your generation now continuing on, and sadly, by the way, there are no real voices. There are no real heroes. I know that hindsight is 2020, but when you look at an era that produced guys like Martin Luther King Jr. and John F. Kennedy, we don't have those people anymore at all. There's nobody. I mean, there's nobody. We have this infotainment consumerist society where we feed on reality television and worship those that look pretty.